Hi, everyone. I'm Vladimir Dutit. We are watching all the news happening in the United States and around the world. If it is coming into the CBS News Broadcast Center from any one of our stations across the country, we'll bring it to you right here. This is CBS News 24/7. Former foes of President Trump line up to support him now as J.D. Vance gets ready for his first speech as the vice presidential nominee. Iran denies they are part of a plot to assassinate Donald Trump, what U.S. intelligence officials are saying, and how it impacted security for the former president before Saturday's shooting. And changes to the highest court in the land. President Biden is considering a series of proposals to reform the Supreme Court. But we begin this morning with the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, where J.D. Vance is getting his first chance on the national stage. Today's theme, Make America Strong Once Again. Republicans are set to focus on foreign policy and national security. Yesterday, several former Trump rivals took to the stage, including Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley. Both traded their sharp criticisms of the former president with now unwavering support. Watch.
I'll start by making one thing perfectly clear. Donald Trump has my strong endorsement, period. I'm here tonight because we have a country to save. And a unified Republican Party is essential for saving her.
Donald Trump has been demonized. He's been sued. He's been prosecuted. And he nearly lost his life. We cannot let him down, and we cannot let America down.
CBS News political correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns joins us now from Milwaukee with more. All right, Caitlin, what a difference a couple of months makes. From Nikki Haley saying to her supporters that Donald Trump is not fit to be president of the United States to what we heard last night. The focus was on unity in the party, but what was the mood like on the floor?
Vlad, it was fascinating being there. I was in the podium position, which is just to the right of the stage. So you can see not only the speaker up close, but also how the crowd and audience is reacting. And I was particularly interested in how this crowd was going to receive Nikki Haley. As you know, I've covered her campaign extensively, interviewed her multiple times, and also talked to lots and lots of Trump supporters at his rallies who were very skeptical of her, were, distrustful of her, thought that she betrayed Donald Trump. Last night, however, she got a very warm reception, and that's because the minute she got out there, she made no qualms about it. She was standing there to endorse Donald Trump. And Vlad, I'm remembering our conversations that we've had when I was reporting in the primaries in South Carolina, for example, when she was calling Donald Trump unfit for this position. She was the last person standing in his way to getting this nomination. But her message was one not only of Republican unity, but Vlad, I also think it spoke to those voters that we've been talking to across the country who are just so disappointed in their choices this election. We've heard it over and over again, that voters don't like the choices that they have. And part of her message last night was, look, elections are about choices. You may not get your favored candidate, but you have to make a decision. And she made clear her decision was for Donald Trump.
Yeah, I am curious, Caitlin, given your history with her in covering her campaign, what she hopes to get out of this, because obviously in politics, there's always some kind of a trade-off. I can see for Ron DeSantis why he might want to get up there in front of those Trump supporters, because he's still governor of a state that is solidly red, solidly Trump. But I'm curious about what Nikki Haley is thinking about for the future. Meanwhile, let's talk about J.D. Vance, talking about flip-floppers. Biggest flip-flopper will be front and center tonight, giving his speech as the vice presidential nominee. What do we expect to hear?
Yeah, but it's a really interesting dynamic because you have all of these people featured on stage. Ted Cruz was on there last night. All of these people who have voiced public, very searing criticisms of Donald Trump, who have now come back into the fold. And that is kind of an underlying message, I can say, talking to delegates here and talking to the campaign here, that this is a message of a Republican Party that has fully come around to Donald Trump and believes that this is the party of Donald Trump. So J.D. Vance response, his selection is seen as, you know, this recognition that the MAGA element of this party, which is the party, he is kind of the standard bearer of that, the new face of the party, the next generation of MAGA, so to speak. So that's going to be kind of, you know, surrounding this pick. But the Trump campaign wants to really emphasize his biography. We all know Hillbilly Elegy, the best-selling memoir, and the Netflix movie that came afterwards. But the campaign also really wants to emphasize his experience as an Iraq War veteran, especially as foreign policy could be at center stage tonight as well. Vlad.
All right, Caitlin Huey-Burns bringing us all the action from Milwaukee. Caitlin, thank you very much. Police officers from out of state who are in Milwaukee for the RNC to help with security killed a homeless man who was found to be carrying knives. There is some body cam footage of that. We want to warn you, it's very, very difficult to watch. The officers tell the man to drop the knives, but he charges at an unarmed man, and then police open fire. Family members and others identified him as 43-year-old Samuel Sharp. Milwaukee Mayor Cavalier Johnson shared his thoughts on the shooting earlier this morning.
Saddened by the death yesterday afternoon as a result of an officer-involved shooting. No one, absolutely no one, wanted this outcome, and I anticipate a full as well as thorough investigation. I spoke just yesterday with my counterpart in Columbus, Mayor Andrew Ginther, and we agreed to stay in communication about the situation that took place here yesterday. Other than the fact that out-of-town officers were involved in this incident, I know of no other connections to the convention. The location of the
police also say that the man was living in an encampment nearby and was known to the community and to local police. Okay, this morning, federal investigators are still searching for the motive of the gunman who opened fire at the Trump rally on Saturday. The FBI has conducted nearly 100 interviews since the attack, and President Biden has ordered an independent review of the event's security. CBS News correspondent Charlie DeMar is joining me now from near the Butler County Fairgrounds. So, Charlie, update us on the investigation.
And Vlad, we expect to actually learn a lot more this afternoon. We just found out that there will be a briefing with the Secret Service, the FBI, a number of different agencies this afternoon at about 3:30. But as we continue to gather information on the ground here, investigators, of course, are trying to build a profile, get a better picture of the shooter's movements leading up to the shooting. Now, sources have told us that the shooter visited a local hardware store and purchased a ladder before the shooting. It's unclear if that ladder was brought here to the rally on Saturday. Home Depot is the store where that ladder was purchased. They did release a statement condemning the shooting. And we're also learning more information, again, about the operations here on Saturday. We know that there was a local sniper team inside the building that the shooter ultimately took position on. They were underneath inside that building, and sources telling us that one of those snipers actually focused in on and made a note of the shooter well before the shooting, said he was acting suspicious, that officer rather noticed that the shooter was glancing up at the roof and was using a rangefinder. Rangefinders are used by marksmen to see how far a shot might be. Golfers use them to see how far a pin may be. So that shooter was on that shooter's radar, that agent's radar. He took a picture of the shooter, sent it up the chain of command, even radioed in that there was someone suspicious. That officer lost sight of the shooter, and a few minutes later, the shooter did return with a backpack, but by that time, the shooter had already taken position on the roof flat.
All right, Charlie DeMar breaking it down for us from Butler County, Pennsylvania. Charlie, thank you very much. Meanwhile, Iran has rejected accusations the country is responsible for plots to assassinate former U.S. President Donald Trump. It comes after sources told CBS News Trump's security detail was beefed up before the shooting that happened on Saturday because U.S. intelligence detected this Iranian plot to kill him. CBS News Homeland Security and Justice reporter Nicole Scanga joins me now from the newsroom in Washington. Nicole, what have we learned this morning about this plot?
Yeah, Vlad, very concerning. In the weeks and months before the shooting at Donald Trump's rally in Butler, an intelligence source tells CBS News that there was a significant uptick in chatter concerning an Iranian plot to assassinate the former U.S. president. We've also learned that was backed up by human-sourced intelligence obtained by the U.S. Now, the White House's National Security Council alerted Secret Service of that threat. And amid other requests by Trump's security detail for more help, more assets were granted. Counter sniper teams, counter assault teams, those agents you saw surround and cover Trump as shots rang out, drones, robotic dogs. We should point out the investigation so far of Saturday's event has not uncovered any links between the shooter there and any co-conspirator, foreign or domestic, according to a law enforcement bulletin. Trump has long been a target for the Iranians, most notably after directing the 2020 airstrike that killed a top Iranian commander. It's unclear just how many of those new assets were at Saturday's rally, but this certainly raising even more questions about how an individual armed with an AR-style weapon could have gotten within 500 feet of the former president, even amid all of this beefed-up security, Vlad.
To be continued for sure. Nicole, thank you for your reporting. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, President Biden begins the day in Nevada, where he is looking to court Black and Hispanic voters. In a pre-taped interview with BET, he spoke about some policies supported by the GOP and how he plans to address them.
Republicans in the Supreme Court, as you note, have banned or are trying to ban affirmative action, the teaching of Black history, dismantling of DE&I projects, and they're promising to roll back even more with something you and I talked about before we started here, and that's Project 2025. How do you stand in the breach?
I stand in the breach by making it clear we're not going to let that happen. For example, if you look at what happened with George Floyd, we didn't get the legislation, so I took executive action. Made sure these guys got to wear cameras and everybody has everything's on. It's changed. It's changed the way things happen. Not what we should have, as far as it should change, but it's changed things.
Okay, CBS News senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang is joining me now from Las Vegas. Weijia, good to see you. So we're learning more about the DNC presidential nomination plan. What have you learned?
That's right, Vlad. So at the RNC this week in Milwaukee, we saw all those delegates formally nominate former President Donald Trump and Senator J.D. Vance to be their Republican ticket. Typically, that's what would happen for the Democrats as well, and their convention begins in Chicago on August 19th. But this year, they actually moved up the date to sometime before August 7th. Why is that? Because they wanted to make sure they were going to get on the critical state of Ohio, and Ohio's law required them to have a nominee by August 7th. And so that's why the DNC also moved their date up. And the plan is to have this virtual roll call to officially nominate Joe Biden sometime before August 7th. Well, they could have done that anytime between July 21st and August 27th, August 7th. Why does this matter, Vlad? It matters because, of course, the background conversation that for now is private because they're trying to allow the president to have his space to respond to the shooting. There's still calls for him within his own party to step down as the nominee, right? So if they were to have this roll call in about 4 days, which they could, that would close the door. It would shut down all those conversations. They would say Joe Biden is officially our candidate. And so this just buys more time for them to have conversations, for them to, if they attempt to try to convince Biden to step down. But I do think it's really interesting, given they have the option of moving it up, to stop those conversations.
Yeah, so let me ask you about those conversations before we talk about the proposed changes to the court, Weijia. The New York Times and others are reporting that just in the hours prior to that assassination attempt on former President Trump, the President Biden held a conversation or had a conference call or some type of call with members of his party, and some of them were not reassured by what the president was saying. In other words, they felt that he was displaying the behavior that 50 million Americans saw during that debate a couple of weeks ago, and specifically a conversation he had with with Congressman Jason Crow. What have you guys learned about that, and what is the Biden camp saying about that?
We are ferociously trying to track that down, Vlad, because I know the report that you referenced, I think people were actually able to access a recording of that Zoom call and hear it for themselves. What we do know is that it's not surprising because, this is a man who does get very testy at times. We are told through sources that he can have a temper and that he does, go off when he feels very passionately about something. So it's not surprising that the president would be irritated whenever the conversation is about whether he should step down and not run for re-election. Even in public, he has been very vocal about the fact that he is not going anywhere. I think, what's important here, Vlad, is that there are still many Democrats who, even if they're not attaching their name to it, even if they're not putting this, Zoom call out to the public, are telling people, telling reporters and others that what they are seeing behind the scenes is not exactly what people see on screen of Biden all the time. And the difference is whether he's off the cuff, whether he's unscripted or reading from a teleprompter. And so that's why there are these concerns about whether he is fit to take on Trump, who, by the way, has more support than ever from his party because of that shooting. And so while the Republicans are extremely unified, there is this chaos happening among Democrats. And that's why, for now, they don't want to publicly have those conversations and appear to be so weak as the Republican National Convention is happening. But there is no question, Vlad, that I think the conversation in public will resume after the RNC, right? And we're already seeing glimpses of that. And so the next few weeks are going to be so critical for how this party moves forward.
Yeah, indeed, and that's why the president is proposing some changes to the Supreme Court, including term limits. Weijia Jiang for us in Las Vegas, tracking the president's movements. We appreciate it as always, Weijia. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, weather now. After some of the hottest days on record, we're finally starting to see some slightly lower temps. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with a preview of the forecast. Grant.
Hey, Vlad, yeah, we'll take whatever we can get at this point. We've been talking about upper 90s, low 100s. Feels like temperatures upwards of 110 degrees. The relief will be minor. It really doesn't get here until tomorrow. Today, another hot day across many parts of the country. In fact, in some parts of the country, the heat is already beginning to rebound. Looking at temperatures in Dallas at 84 degrees currently. But I want to focus your attention once again across the mid-Atlantic and the northeastern states. Washington, D.C., the district right now, temperatures are in the upper 80s, 88 degrees in Washington. New York has just hit 80 degrees, 83 degrees in Boston. We've got excessive heat warnings where feels like temperatures could approach 106 degrees, heat advisories beyond that. But there is relief. It comes by way of severe weather. We'll talk about that here in just a few minutes. You're watching CBS News. We'll take a quick break.
Over in Chicago, tens of thousands of people are without power after at least 17 tornadoes popped up in the area since Monday. Mugo Odiwe with CBS News Chicago has the very latest.
More than 80,000 people in the Chicago area woke up without power this morning, but that number keeps going down as ComEd works to restore it. Now, those storms from Sunday and Monday came with at least 17 confirmed tornadoes and counting. Meanwhile, out here in South suburban Harvey, while people are still dealing with power issues and also damage from those storms. Take a look behind me right now. If you look on the ground, you can see power lines unraveled across the street from where we're standing. You see this tree split in half. Right behind it, debris from other trees that also came down during the storms. Now, ComEd says they are working to restore power, and power should be fully restored by Friday. For CBS News, I'm Mugo Odiwe.
All right, so those Midwest storms have started now moving east, which could also mean relief from the sweltering heat. Baking the Northeast, temperatures in the 90s will cool down to about the 80s tomorrow in some parts of the country. Meanwhile, yesterday, severe thunderstorms moved throughout the Northeast, causing widespread damage from power outages to falling trees, just like over in Chicago. CBS News New York reporter Shosh Bedrosian joins me now from Secaucus, New Jersey, for a deeper look at the weather. Shosh, how are residents dealing with the heat after those storms? It doesn't feel as hot as it was yesterday.
Oh, Vlad, we're starting to definitely feel the heat coming down here right now. And it could be actually a travel nightmare for commuters that take the New Jersey Transit for the next few days. And I'll tell you why. With these extreme heat and temperatures we are feeling right now, it's also causing rail issues, specifically on some of the lines here in New Jersey Transit. It's impacting air conditioning units. It's impacting electrical components as well. And so far, we know that 8, like I said, rail lines have been impacted by these delays. This excessive heat is causing all of these problems for commuters on the New Jersey Transit line. Actually, the agency is telling commuters it may be necessary for them to cancel or to combine their travel plans for the next 48 to 72 hours. So a long stretch for commuters there. And the agency says they are working around the clock with their maintenance crews to try to fix this so there's not this crazy ripple effect throughout the week. Vlad?
All right, Shosh, thanks so much for sticking around for us. I know you've been covering this since the early mornings. Appreciate it. All right, let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with another look at the national forecast. Over to you, Grant.
I'll tell you what, Vlad, the heat has been relentless. And then you get the storms, and now we're in for another day with a lot of heat. Much of the mid-Atlantic and Northeast is going to be baking before another risk for severe weather later on this afternoon. Let's take a look here because really it is a global thing that we're keeping an eye on. But right here in the United States, it's not just one place that's been dealing with the heat, but several places across the continental United States that have really been baking for the last several days. And that's already been the case this morning. Look at Dallas starting off the day with temperatures at 84 degrees. Up toward the Northeast, temperatures in D.C. right now at 89 degrees. So the heat is already building, and then that will continue as we head into the afternoon. In fact, it's all of that heat and that humidity that is fueling these rounds of severe weather. Another round of severe weather across the mid-Atlantic and Northeast today. A slight risk for severe, really from northern Virginia through New Jersey, all the way through Philadelphia into New York, and even portions of Boston and parts of central Massachusetts, looking for that potential for some severe weather. But that comes after the heat peaks this afternoon. Excessive heat warnings in effect for the Philadelphia area down into New Jersey, right up to New York City, where New York City is underneath a heat advisory where it feels like temperatures will once again soar into the triple digits. I mentioned how it's not just the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. The heat rebuilding across the southern Mississippi Valley, eastern Louisiana up to northern Louisiana, the Arklatex area there. Heat advisories where, you guessed it, feeling like the triple digits. In fact, those triple digit feels like temperatures extend from Texas all the way along the Gulf states. Of course, Florida feeling the humidity, but just look how those feels like temperatures are well into the 100s, all the way through the mid-Atlantic into the north and east. But there is that relief. Cold front comes through. Yes, it produced the severe weather, but look at high temperatures tomorrow across the mid-Atlantic and Northeast. Mid and even some lower 80s. That is what a cold front does, and that's what a lot of us are looking forward to. Vlad, back to you.
Me included. Grant, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
All right, Senator Bob Menendez is now facing pressure to resign after becoming the first sitting member of Congress to be convicted of acting as a foreign agent. So what is next for him and his seat? You're going to find out. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Former Trump aide Peter Navarro has been released from a Miami prison. He's expected to actually head to Milwaukee to take to the stage at the Republican National Convention today. Navarro was serving a 4-month sentence for refusing to comply with a congressional subpoena related to the January 6th investigation. The date is set for the Georgia Appeals Court to hear arguments about whether to disqualify DA Fani Willis from Trump's election interference case. Oral arguments will begin on December 5th. The former president and his allies are trying to remove her from overseeing the case. They claim her relationship with another prosecutor on the case poses a conflict of interest. And an update on a story we first brought you yesterday. Authorities confirmed the 6 people who were found dead in a hotel room in Thailand yesterday had traces of cyanide in their blood. Officials just released those autopsy results for the victims this morning. They include 2 Vietnamese Americans and 4 Vietnamese nationals. 2 of the victims were husband and wife. They had invested money with 2 of the others. Investigators believe a possible argument over money or debt may have been the motive. Okay, it is now day 3 of the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. Today's theme, Make America Strong Once Again. Republicans are set to focus on foreign policy and national security, including the ongoing wars in Ukraine and in the Middle East. And the speakers are expected to dig into the Biden administration's handling of those global issues. Earlier, my colleague Errol Barnett spoke to Florida Senator Rick Scott about what priorities he'd like to see former President Trump tackle.
We have now conflicts that are rising up around the world, whether Ukraine or in Israel. We've got to figure out how to stop that, hold the bad guys accountable, make sure our enemies fear our military and our allies respect us. So those are the things that would be at the top of my list.
Okay, CBS News campaign reporter Torian Small joins me now from Milwaukee with more on this. So Torian, today's theme, as we just told our viewers, is Make America Safe Once Again. Now, coming off this weekend's assassination attempt on the former president, how might that impact some of the talking points we can expect today?
So far, Vlad, we've seen it intricately woven into the speeches of every speaker throughout the week, even though the themes have been different. Make America wealthy again, the first day safe again, and now strong again for tonight. It's something that they're hoping could serve as a place to, or a starting point to start the talks of unity within the party. That's why it was notable to see former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley take the stage yesterday. Her team confirmed just Sunday they were invited to give remarks at the convention. And this is, of course, after she had a very icy relationship with the former president for running in the 2024 presidential Republican primary. But last night she came out and gave a full-throated endorsement of Donald Trump, telling not just the president but delegates here that they have to look beyond just trying to welcome her supporters back to the party. They should also make a case to Democrats and independents that the Republican Party has a much broader umbrella than they're traditionally known for.
All right, Torian, my apologies to our viewers. We said that today's theme was Make America Safe Again. It's, in fact, Make America Strong Again. So that is what we expect to hear from some of those attendees and some of those speakers later tonight. Apologies for that, but let's talk about the vice presidential nominee, J.D. Vance. He's set to address the convention tonight. What are you hearing about what his speech might entail?
Vlad, this will serve as an introduction to not just the Republican Party, but to the country. He is known for his best-selling book, Hillbilly Elegy. He also is known for his service in the military, but he is a freshman senator, a 39-year-old freshman senator at that, from the Midwest. So his appeal is to that Rust Belt, some states that might have flipped for Democrats in the past election that Donald Trump's looking to flowed back into his 2024 coalition. So not only will he be speaking or introducing himself to the general American public, but he's also looking to underscore Donald Trump's campaign platform this time again. Again, Make America Strong Again, a part of this overall Make America Great Again platform. And he's looking to do that as a way to counter what Democrats will likely do, which is counter programming that he's just a rubber stamp to the former president, Vlad.
All right, Torian, let me ask you about now the former president. He's expected to take to the podium tomorrow. The president himself has said that initially, before the assassination attempt on his life, he was going to be classic Trump. He was going to be pugilist in how he approached this speech. But now we've gotten a very different message signaled from the president himself that he plans to talk more about unity. And what would that sound like? Does he mean unity within the Republican Party, or does he mean bringing alongside the MAGA movement some disaffected Democrats, or perhaps even Democrats who are looking for an alternative to business as usual?
So this messaging pivot is two-pronged. Of course, he's going to talk to Republicans, especially some notably former defectors, so Haley supporters, other people looking for someone not named Trump, to tell them to come back to the party. But he's also going to talk to independents, like you said, some wayward Democrats who are looking for someone not named Joe Biden. How he's planning to do that is by, like you said, making a pitch to unity really painting Democrats as the party of the more violent rhetoric. The RNC said that speakers are looking to tamp down this week some of that conversation around bad versus good, but it's likely that Donald Trump will invoke that assassination attempt and say that the Republican Party is not the party of violence, and acts like that only proves that the other side is the ones behind it.
All right, so still planning on going after the opposition. Taurine, thank you very much, my friend. Appreciate it. Okay, Democratic Senator Bob Menendez says he will appeal his conviction for bribery, but many of his Senate colleagues say he should resign or possibly be expelled. He was found guilty yesterday in New York City after a 2-month trial. Our Nicole Killian has been following this trial from Washington and joins me now to discuss. So, Nicole, what are you hearing? I mean, we've already had statements, full-on statements from sitting members of the United States Senate saying that they believe that Bob Menendez should resign. What are you hearing about that pressure campaign and from the senator himself?
Well, keep in mind that pressure campaign started last fall when the senator was initially indicted. And so now a lot of these calls are resurfacing, although certainly notable that Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is now calling on Senator Menendez to resign, saying that he should do it for the good of his constituents, the country, and the Senate. But, you know, look, in terms of next steps, the senator has remained mum about his political future. Keep in mind that he is also running for a re-election. He is switched over to an independent to be able to continue that Senate run since he was being challenged on the Democratic side, most notably by New Jersey Congressman Andy Kim. But as far as the Senate's options, if the senator does not make a decision to step down immediately, then the Senate Ethics Committee has made clear that it is going to conclude its investigation into the senator promptly, and that it will consider a range of disciplinary options, which could potentially include expulsion. I think it's worth noting that the last time a senator was expelled was during the Civil War. So this is something that would be very rare in the Senate if it took that course of action. And there are some senators calling for Menendez's expulsion. Of course, over in the House, the last time we saw that take place was last fall with Congressman George Santos.
All right, Nicole Killian for us on the Hill. Nicole, thank you.
Great, you bet.
10 years ago, Eric Garner repeated the phrase, "I can't breathe," while in a chokehold by New York City police officers just before being pronounced dead at a hospital. How his family is marking the grim anniversary and honoring his legacy today. CBS News has learned that the U.S. has decided to end the Gaza Pier project. The pier has been hit by bad weather and some mechanical malfunctions and has only been in operation for about 20 days. In that time, though, nearly 20 million pounds of aid has been delivered. A U.S. official tells us it will not be reattached to the shore in Gaza, saying, quote, "The mission is over." Israeli strikes, meanwhile, on central and southern Gaza continue. The IDF says that half of the leadership of Hamas's military wing has been killed since the start of the war. Our Deborah Patta reports from Tel Aviv, and a warning: this report contains some images many may find disturbing.
Gaza has suffered one of the deadliest weeks of strikes since the war began, leaving the few hospitals that are still functioning overrun with mostly civilian casualties. American volunteer in Gaza, Dr. Mohammed Soubeh, told us that about 2/3 of all casualties that he is seeing are children, and that aid trucks with crucial medical equipment are still being prevented from entering the territory, forcing them to regularly amputate the limbs of children who would otherwise not need such a drastic procedure if they had the appropriate resources. Israel has been launching daily strikes, often in areas deemed safe zones. This father has fled violence multiple times in a bid to keep his family safe until yesterday. Life was wrenched apart in an instant when an Israeli airstrike tore through their tent camp, killing his beloved 21-month-old son, whom he had just put down for an afternoon nap. It bears pointing out that 9 months into this war, foreign journalists are still not allowed to enter and report independently from Gaza. But doctors tell us, Vlad, that the situation is worse than ever.
Absolutely heartbreaking. Deborah Patta reporting from Tel Aviv for us. Thank you, Deborah. Okay, today marks 10 years since a New York City man died after he was placed in a chokehold by a police officer. His name was Eric Garner, and his death sparked the Black Lives Matter protests around the country, with his words, "I can't breathe," becoming a rallying cry. In just a few minutes, Eric Garner's mother will lead a march in her late son's honor. CBS News reporter Natalie Duddridge is in Staten Island, where that march is set to take place. Natalie, as you know, it's been 10 years. What are some of the changes that Eric Garner's mother is still asking the city and the NYPD to implement?
Well, Vlad, good morning. First off, I just spoke to Gwen Carr, Eric Garner's mother. She says she remembers this day like it was yesterday. And as you said, it has been 10 years since her son, Eric Garner, was killed at the age of 43 in one of the most controversial, high-profile deaths in New York City's history. It sparked outrage not only here, but right across the country. And so she will lead a march that will kick off from the Staten Island Ferry Terminal here around 11 this morning. It will head to Tompkinsville Park, where there is a street named after Eric Garner Way. Now, he was 43 years old. It was 2014 when he was allegedly selling loose cigarettes. And during an arrest attempt, there was cell phone video that was taken. That cell phone video seen around the country, around the world, where he said, "I can't breathe," at least 11 times. His death was deemed a homicide. And NYPD officer Daniel Pantaleo was never charged. It took at least 5 years for him to be fired. And Eric Garner's mother, Gwen Carr, says she wants to see justice for the other officers who were also there at the scene at that time. And so she has continued to fight for change, not only for herself, but for her entire family. And so that is why they're holding this commemoration today. There will be food, there will be speakers, and they want to remember Eric Garner in a positive way. He loved basketball. He loved football. He loved cars. He had hopes and dreams of owning a garage and fixing cars, and he never got to achieve that, Vlad.
Yeah, and he had children, and he even had grandchildren, Natalie, as you know. Are they expected to take part in this march, and how is the community preparing?
Yes, the grandchildren, children, supporters, all expected to be here. Community members here at Staten Island, of course, remember this. I wasn't here covering Staten Island at the time, but I arrived 2 years later. You can feel the impact. In fact, I was just speaking to one of my photographers who said on that day, this actually just came over as a regular arrest call, and it wasn't until this video came out the day later that it absolutely erupted. So, again, preparations today underway, taking place here at 11 o'clock this morning in that park. Again, there will be speakers, and it will be lasting through 7 p.m. this evening. So they're inviting everybody from the community to come out and remember, but also to continue to push for change.
All right, Natalie Duddridge for us, reporting from here in New York City, where that march in the memory of Eric Garner will take place later today. Natalie, we'll check back in with you a little bit later. We appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, we got a lot more news ahead. You are streaming CBS News 24/7. Stick around. The mayor of Paris is hoping to ease concerns about the cleanliness of the River Seine ahead of the Summer Olympics. She went on a swim in the body of water where top athletes from around the world are set to begin competing next week. In Paris for us is CBS News foreign correspondent Elaine Cobb. Elaine, I know the Seine very well. I've never thought it to be particularly clean. I'm a little concerned for those athletes. Is the mayor still feeling well?
Well, good morning, Vlad. We haven't heard anything otherwise. People cheered as she lowered herself into the water, but they were mostly on dry ground. And she came out saying the water was exquisite, a little bit fresh, bit cold, but otherwise good. They said it was safe to swim today, but, you know, many of the tests up until the last few weeks said absolutely not. And that could still change. The problem is that the Seine was heavily polluted because wastewater runs off into it, especially when there's heavy rain. Now, $1.5 billion have been spent on this cleanup operation, and that included the construction of an underground rainwater storage tank, and that's supposed to deal with the runoff. enough. But all it needs is heavy rain for a few days, and you have rain coming from the mountains and washing in from the streets of Paris, and it just becomes unsafe again.
So what does happen when there is that rain? And let's say that happens before an event is to be held on the Seine. What then happens to that event?
Testing is continuing, and Tony Estanguet, the Olympic president here, who was also in the Seine today, said that they are prepared to postpone the races, if need be, by 1 or 2 days. That's pretty much all they've got for the marathons, which are set for August 8 and 9. That's just before the closing ceremony on the 11th. But first up is the men's triathlon, and that's on July 30th, followed by the women's the next day and the mixed relay afterwards. And Estanguet said, you know, if the tests aren't good enough, we'll just drop the swimming and it'll be a biathlon. But, you know, Vlad, interestingly, people aren't asking, what about the poor athletes who've been training for this, who are relying on the swimming part of the triathlon, or who have been training for a river marathon? Now they may potentially have been training for nothing.
And finally, Elaine, what's the vibe like? I mean, you know that I lived in Paris for a third of my life. It's one of my favorite cities in the world. I can't imagine what it would be like with the throngs of tourists that come to Paris regularly. Now add on Olympic spectators. Give me a sense.
Well, we have fewer tourists than usual. Many people have said, you know, we came before the Olympics and we are getting out of town. Others who would be repeat visitors said they just couldn't cope with it unless they're actually Olympic fans. And many Parisians have already fled because they say it's been so much construction work, so much disruption to their daily lives. Choosing to have that opening ceremony on the river has made it a huge, huge disruption.
All right, Elaine Cobb for us in the City of Lights. Elaine, thank you. Appreciate it. Salut. All right, baseball's Major League All-Star Game was last night in Arlington, Texas. Dodger star Shohei Ohtani hit a 3-run homer in the third for the National League, but first-time All-Star Jarren Duran of the Boston Red Sox was the hero and the MVP. His 2-run homer led the American lead to a comeback 5-3 victory. Now, let's talk about the story that we brought to you yesterday. The criticism of Grammy-nominated singer Ingrid Andress's rendition of the national anthem before the Home Run Derby, which drew attention on social media because it was so terrible. Well, she apologized in an Instagram post yesterday, writing, quote, "I was drunk last night. I'm checking myself into a facility today to get the help I need. That was not me last night." It's interesting to me that she would say, "I'm wasted, so I can't sing." Every member of Motley Crue, Janis Joplin, Courtney Love, Belinda Carlisle, Keith Richards would like you to hold his beer. So I don't know about that, but good news that she's getting the help that she needs. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with one last look at the national forecast. Do you buy that, Grant?
No, I can't sing if I've had alcohol or not. So, I mean, look, whatever. So, look, she was up there. She was doing her best. And like you said, I'm glad she's getting the help that she needs for sure. Let's talk about the heat, because the heat is really something that we're all tired of at this point, right? So, but it's actually going to come to an end, which is a good thing. Let's bring in some clouds here. I want to show you this. A cold front moving across the Midwestern states, advancing to the north and east. So look at the clear conditions across the Midwest. That's high pressure, but ahead of that high pressure system is a cold front. That's going to bring some severe weather to portions of the country later on this afternoon, and something that we're really going to have to watch for, that threat for severe weather. There is that slight risk all up along the mid-Atlantic into the Northeast, damaging winds, heavy rain, all possible. But again, this will bring the cooler temperatures that we've all been waiting for. Vlad, back over to you.
All right, Grant, I'll meet you at a karaoke bar in Philly. Thank you very much, brother. An encore of CBS Mornings is coming up next. This is CBS News 24/7.